After a decade of debate and a year since the formal announcement, the Buffalo Bills, Erie County, and the state of New York have broken ground on the new home of the Bills franchise, and the largest stadium ever built in the state of New York. It took over a year for officials to finalize all the paperwork necessary to get the project started, including the highly anticipated Community Benefit Agreement. In this video, we'll break down everything that's happened so far now that construction has begun, including a timeline of where things may go from here, point out some specifics and shortfalls of the CBA, and recap the highly emotional groundbreaking ceremony. This is the Bills' new stadium, Summer 2023 update. First, let's briefly recap the events we've covered so far. Talk about the Bills building a new stadium had been going on for almost a decade when it was announced in March 2022 that the state of New York, Erie County, and the Buffalo Bills organization had agreed in principle to a funding package for a new stadium in Orchard Park. The Bills' existing venue, Highmark Stadium, celebrates its 50th anniversary in 2023, and some Bills fans may say that doesn't sound old enough given the declining condition of the structure and its extremely limited amenities. Renovating Highmark was quickly dismissed after studies were completed showing the cost vastly outweighing the return. This was despite numerous subtle improvements that were made over the decades, including $130 million in improvements to bathrooms, concessions, and a new Westside Plaza in 2014. That project was part of the 10-year lease agreement the Bills signed in 2012, such a short agreement alluding that the Bills would not be signing another lease with the aging venue again. Proposal after proposal came through the door throughout the rest of the decade, brewing a contentious debate about whether to place a new stadium in Buffalo's comparatively small and limited downtown, or to build a new venue next to the old one in Orchard Park. After public debate, opposition by the mayor, and at the discretion of the Bills owners Terry and Kim Pegula, the Bills finalized a deal with the state of New York and Erie County to fund a brand new 62,000-seat stadium across from Highmark Stadium in March of 2022 at an estimated cost of $1.4 billion. The state of New York would cover $600 million, Erie County $250 million, the Bills $250 million, and the NFL $200 million via a G4 loan issued to the Bills, which has a specific formula as to what funds are used to pay it back. After that announcement, the New York State Legislature passed the state's fiscal budget, which included the $600 million in funding for the new stadium out of the total $220 billion annual budget. It was then revealed that nearly all of the state's contribution would come from overdue payments due to the state from the Seneca Nation for their operation of 3 casinos in Northwest New York. Once all of the funding was approved, we were then waiting on renderings to be released, and since the project involved a significant amount of public funding, we were also waiting on all the necessary parties to agree to a Community Benefit Agreement, which typically takes the longest out of everything else in the process. In the summer of 2022, the Bills released a site plan for the new stadium, revealing that 250 acres of land consisting of current parking lots and athletic fields from the campus of Erie Community College would be used as the site for the new stadium, having no impact on the college's existing structures. In October, after months of waiting, the Bills, in conjunction with architectural firm Populous, released the first 2 official renderings of the new stadium for public feedback, and some additional details about amenities and features were also released, such as 2/3 of the stands would be covered under a canopy, there would be heating elements all throughout the stadium, and there would be a large sculpture of buffaloes greeting fans at the entrance. The most obvious reason for releasing so few renderings early on was to solicit public feedback and confirm architects were on the right track before pressing forward. For the most part, the concept seemed well received by fans, and on February 27, 2023, the Bills released a new batch that included more details in the exterior facade and articulated details of the broader site, giving fans a better glimpse of how the stadium was really going to look once it was built. Exactly 1 month later, the Bills released another set of renderings, bringing the total publicly available to 13. This time, however, the team provided a few brief explanations of some of the interior concepts in the design, revealing additional details about the new stadium. On the home side, above the first section of seating, will sit what the Bills call the flag bar. Based on their description, this is likely to simply be open space concessions where guests will be able to hang out while still being close to the game. Additionally, the rendering showed a three-dimensional Bills logo that they say will span multiple concourses and a shout wall that will also be featured somewhere in the stadium. Just a week later, on April 4th, the Bills announced that they, along with the state of New York and Erie County, had signed all documents and contracts related to the project, this being done in time to allow for a required 30-day review by the Erie County legislature. This was a big milestone because it also signified that the long-awaited community benefit agreement had been signed and was subsequently released to the public. The Bills and Erie County community officials took a different approach to the CBA than what is typical. The Bills made explicit commitments to have local union and minority workers on site, which is typically a requirement as part of the project labor agreement as well. But rather than build a specific project or target a certain part of the community, the Bills announced that they would legally commit, via threat of eviction, $3 million a year over 30 years to an oversight panel made up of community members who would then decide what to do with the funds. Critics say the lack of specificity is unprecedented and very concerning, but considering that negotiators of the deal had to sign non-disclosure agreements and Erie County Legislature Chairwoman April Baskin was the only community member allowed at the negotiating table, I think this approach is much more satisfactory than having done anything else. Given that no funds were set aside for the Oversight Committee, it's likely to be on a volunteer basis. The CBA outlines that the panel will consist of 9 members. 2 members will be appointed by Baskin, 2 by County Executive Mark Polenkars, 3 by the Bills, and 2 by the Erie County Stadium Corp., a subsidiary of the Empire State Development Corp., or New York State government. Baskin stated after the CBA's release that in addition to giving the power of the CBA to residents, there were some legal ramifications around singling out a race or singling out a specific part of the community when you really need to be investing in the general public. Some of the other highlights of the CBA include construction of a transit hub built into the stadium and additional bus service via the Niagara Falls Frontier Transportation Authority, opening the stadium for field trips, allowing high school students to shadow Bills officials, offering internships to college students, and sending Bills officials to schools to give lectures and presentations. The county will be permitted to host 5 civic events at the stadium each year, and the team must donate an unspecified number of tickets to Bills games and parking passes to county officials each season. Some were also pushing for the Bills to pay to replace the college's football field that the new stadium will be built on top of. However, Baskin said the county will pay to replace the field. Once the 30-day Erie County legislative review passed, the Bills announced construction would begin immediately, revealing no details about a groundbreaking ceremony. Site preparation then began, setting up perimeter fencing, removing vegetation, and preliminary demolition of parking lots. When the Bills finally did announce details of a groundbreaking ceremony to the public, it was a whopping 3 days in advance. However, judging by the inscribed shovels and high-profile figures at the event, there certainly was way more than 3 days of preparation put into planning the ceremony. And on top of all of that, the groundbreaking ceremony was closed to the public on an invite-only basis. And if you ask me, that is kind of a bad look for a project that is being near 60% paid for by taxpayers. And by playing favorites, you're only feeding the argument against publicly funding stadium projects. At the under an hour ceremony, most major officials from the project were given a chance to speak, including Bills owner Terry Pegula, Bills COO Ron Rakuya, New York Governor Kathy Hochul, NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell, Erie County Executive Mark Polenkars, and it was all emceed by Bills team reporter Maddie Glab. Terry Pegula alluded to the team's previous owner and founder, the late Ralph Wilson, in his opening remarks, stating, "Ralph, we're moving across the street," and called out Wilson's wife Mary, who was in attendance. In addition to remarking about the project, Pegula read the names of the 10 victims of the Buffalo supermarket shooting 1 year prior and broke out crying while doing so. He also noted his wife, who has been dealing with significant language and memory issues after going into cardiac arrest a year ago. New York Governor Kathy Hochul, a lifelong Bills fan and Western New York native, touted the team's annual economic impact to the community of around $385 million, saying that keeping the Bills in Buffalo was very important. She also stated that construction of the stadium will result in 10,000 jobs. NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell, also a native of Western New York, said he had been to over 20 stadium groundbreakings in his career, but none were more significant to him than this one. It was also announced during the ceremony that the Bills had reached a new naming rights agreement with Highmark Blue Cross Blue Shield of Western New York to move the name of the current Highmark Stadium over to the new venue, with officials now calling the project New Highmark Stadium. The dollar amount was not disclosed, but the previous deal was a little under $6 million per year. It's also unclear how much is paid up front or used for construction costs. The event concluded with the ceremonial shoveling of already excavated dirt, and construction of the Bills' new home was now formally underway. The stadium is the largest construction project ever in Western New York. It encloses 1.35 million square feet and sits on a 242-acre site. The Community Benefit Agreement and Project Labor Agreement outline specific figures about union and minority presence on site throughout the totality of the project, but union leaders say that 90% of the estimated 10,000 workers will be local, saying further that projects like this one are great recruiting tools to bring people into the skilled trades and increase apprenticeship numbers from iron workers, skilled crane operators, pipe fitters, electricians, and more. To be clear, the 10,000 workers is estimated across the total 3-year project, and not the total on-site at any given time. Local union leaders say that they are very confident that they will be able to supply the manpower required to complete the project and ensure the project is finished on time by fall 2026. Season tickets for the 2026 season have not been made available yet, but for a $150 fee, you can join the waiting list. The Bills have confirmed, however, that purchase of a personal seat license will be required to buy season tickets. As of right now, everyone is targeting that 2026 project completion date, and while the exact timing is unknown, officials state that they plan for the new stadium to host all 2026 Bills home games. Construction will obviously start progressing very quickly, but I'm really curious as to how the New York winters are going to impact this project. I don't have a ton of large construction project experience, but from looking at other stadiums, my guess is that site preparation will continue throughout the summer, and if we're lucky, we'll start seeing concrete being poured by the fall. But if they don't get that far, then maybe next spring we'll see the foundation start being poured. If that's the case, then we are definitely a year out from going vertical with construction, but once we do, things will go really quick. So, once again, we're probably a year from vertical construction, then maybe 2 years from being under roof, so to speak, and then the last year will be spent finalizing the interior and exterior of the structure. For now, we're just going to have to wait and see what progress is made this summer, and we here at LaBreeze TV will be watching closely.